All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we are going to talk about what Derrick James, the trainer of Errol Spence Jr., had to say about the Terence Crawford fight, and more importantly, why it is that Errol Spence Jr. is going to be out there breaking bones. Errol Spence himself put up an emoji with people's eye sockets popping out. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the best fighters in boxing and what his trainer Derrick James had to say about Errol Spence, and the Terence Crawford fight and other fights at 154 pounds. A very, very interesting conversation that took place last night on a podcast. Please forgive me, I do not have the name of the podcast. We'll put it in the link in the description box so that you can go check it out. Oh, and so people that don't know, I do not take audio from other people's podcasts and put it on my channel. Just wouldn't appreciate it if other people did that to me. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to talk about it and analyze it. Now, before I get into that though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Please consider accepting my invitation to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. Also, if you are a longtime subscriber and consistent follower of the channel, thank you so much. You guys are the ones that really make this channel go. Thank you for checking out the videos and letting me know what you think in the comment section. And thank you for coming to the live streams that we do pretty much every day of the week. So also make sure you hit that like and that shares. But let's get into the conversation, because not a whole lot of stuff going on in boxing. So we keep kind of coming around to many of the same discussions. But while you do that, you can really get some depth into the topic, into the sport of boxing. And that's exactly what happened in this interview with Derrick James last night. Now, if you're not familiar with who Derrick James is the trainer of Errol Spence Jr., who holds the IBF, the WBC, and the WBA belts at 147 pounds. And he's also the trainer of the undisputed champion at 154 pounds, who holds the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, and the WBO. And that is Jermell Iron Man Charlo from Houston. So in two weight classes, Derrick James holds 7 belts, and he has 2 guys, one guy that he built from the ground up, another guy, Jermell Charlo, who he took from someone else and turned into a big knockout puncher, right? So if you look at Jermell Charlo's resume, at his record, he doesn't have that many knockouts. But if you look at his last, 10 fights, seems like a whole lot of those knockouts are in his last 10 fights. Like when he started stepping up and started getting into championship level fights, right? So guys like Jason Rosario, he knocked out. Guys like Brian Castano, he knocked out in the second fight. Same thing with Tony Harrison. So, right, great pedigree as a trainer for Derrick James. So Derrick James was asked about the Terence Crawford fight and said, look, I don't know what's going on with the Terence Crawford fight. I'm not on that side. I just wait around. I'm just waiting for them to tell me go. And when they say go, that's when we start preparing. He did, however, say that they are not going to break the bank for Terence Crawford. And there you go. Obviously, again, the issue is the money. That is not, at a certain point in time, when people speculate about what's holding up the fight, when everybody is saying the same thing, that is it's almost like speculating that the sun is going to come up in the morning. Like, you don't know for sure if it will. However, since it's been doing so since the beginning of time, it may just happen tomorrow as well, right? So you have Errol Spence Jr. saying it. You've got Terence Crawford himself saying it. You've got, or at least the business aspect of it. You got Bernie the Boxer saying it. You've got Steven Espinoza who said it. You got Derrick James who implied it. It's just pretty much what it is. However, that was not the most interesting portion of the discussion for me, because that at this point in time, I think is pretty well understood. However, when they were breaking down what Errol Spence Jr. does compared to other fighters. Now, this is a very thinly veiled comparison, right? And again, I'm definitely making an assumption that he was comparing him to Terence Crawford, but come on, who else you talking about? He said, look, man, Terence Crawford or certain fighters get these flash knockdowns, right? So like they hit you, you can get knocked out. That's a flash knockout. They hit you with one shot. The difference between that and Errol Spence Jr. is that Errol Spence Jr. is literally breaking your bones. He's breaking your bones. He's breaking your ribs. He's breaking your eye sockets. He's breaking your nose. And there is a reason why that is. And the reason why he said that is said because Errol is a true student of the science of boxing, the sweet science of boxing. Now, that seems to me to be, it sounded to me to be the opposite of what many people, like many experts and Hall of Fame level fighters and these guys talk about when they talk about the science of the sport, right? Now, and this is what DERRICK James is saying. So in explaining why some people who are real, obvious, it may be referring to, it's not obvious, may be referring to guys like Roy Jones Jr., Antonio Tarver, and Roy Jones Jr., Antonio Tarver, who was the other guy? Maybe even Mike Tyson, but Antonio Tarver, Roy Jones Jr., James Toney, James Toney's the other guy I'm looking for. And those guys they talk about the art of boxing, but with and the adjustments that other fighters make, specifically Terence Crawford. And what DERRICK James is saying is, look, arrows are just very, very subtle. You cannot really see it. And so he's like things like the way that he turns his hips into the shot, the way that he dips, he attacks on the inside and moves over to the left, the way he attacks on the inside, moves over to the right, and the adjustments that he makes and the things that he sees. But he talked about the physics of the punch and that being why he's punching with his entire body, right? And then he talks about the workouts that Errol Spence has and how Errol Spence Jr. he's just super conditioned to throw a million punches, but each one of those punches they're all hard, right? So when you had somebody compare the punches of Jaron Ennis to Errol Spence Jr., Chris Van Heerden, who fought both, said, Jaron hit him with a harder shot, but every one of Errol Spence Jr.'s shots is hard. And what DERRICK James is saying is that he's not throwing them hard. The technique behind his punches, he's not loading up on the punches. It's that because so much of his body and his torque is into the punch that every punch becomes heavy, and that's how you start breaking ribs, you start breaking noses, you start breaking eye sockets, and you make people sit out, or they're never the same, or they got to sit out 2 years for 2 years after the fight takes place, right? So very, very interesting discussion in the comparison between the styles of Errol Spence and Terence Crawford and the long-lasting damage that Errol Spence Jr. can impose on you in a lot less flashy way. Now, this is obviously, DERRICK James' take, but hey, dude, I think that there's a lot of credit. I mean, there's a lot of credibility to that, man. Those guys have a science behind the way that they are going about breaking down people's bodies and wearing them down and then eventually stopping them versus kind of fighting on the outside, looking for a big gap and then relying on that one shot to get him out of there and get him, hit him and get him out and get him in trouble. And one may be more reliable than the other, especially if, you don't catch that dude in that shot that you want to catch him in. Similar to the way that, that Terence Crawford fought Jose Benavidez, and it went a very long time and the fight was close, even though Terence Crawford was definitely winning the fight, but he looked for that big shot. Now, if he winds up having a closer boxing match and that shot doesn't come, and then you can find yourself sitting there with a decision loss where if somebody is chipping on you, breaking you down, you may lose a few rounds in the beginning, but at the end, you may be gone. But anyway, I thought that was a really, really good discussion. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.